I gambled my way to jail cells. I'm a 12-time convicted felon. I gambled my way to psychiatric wards. I gambled my way to complete homelessness, living as a fugitive in a tent in the woods. I shouldn't be here. I should either be long dead or locked away in a prison. Loans there, loans in the car, loans with the loan sharks and the bookies. I couldn't pick up the telephone and answer it. I was running scared. I became this person that I never thought I would become.
Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the One Day at a Time podcast. Today's guest is Sean Fournia. He is a peer support specialist who works with problem gamblers, and he's in recovery from a gambling addiction himself. Sean, thank you for joining me today.
Yeah, thank you for having me, Rob. This is great. It's an honor and privilege to be here.
Tell us about who you are and when's that first time that you made a bet?
My name is Sean Fournia. I work as a peer support specialist. I am a person that lives with a gambling disorder. For a very, very long time. I am in recovery. My date of my last bet was June 18th, 2021. One day at a time. I haven't found it necessary, emotionally, mentally, physically, or spiritually, to bet, spin, or scratch. Amen. Doing it one day at a time.
Absolutely. Love to hear that.
Yeah.
Let's take it back because now you're doing so well, but where did it all begin?
Wow. So that's a great question. So for me, it goes way back to early along, right? I was raised with a good family, right? And fortunate. And so from a very young age, before I could walk, I was in the wintertime sliding down the mountain on skis and sliding across the water. From a very early age, I was getting mass amounts of dopamine, right? And I was fortunate, right? Played sports, right? And so I was kind of wired for dopamine, right? I got it at an early age. I loved it. Video games come along, right? And I get heavily involved in the video games, and it's providing all those things that dopamine release when I'm not doing those other activities, right? And then it just progressively gets worse. From there, it escalates into, the family card games and the poker games. It's social activity, and learning the cards, learning the dice early along, playing with family, friends. And then as I get into my teen years, the sports really come into play. I played a lot of sports, right? And so I get into all the football pools, basketball pools, any kind of pool available. The squares were X number amount of money, and you got those or whatever. And it kept going. And so, Rob, I really, when I talk about my story, I shouldn't be here. I should either be long dead or locked away in a prison as a direct result of my problem gambling. It got that bad as time went on. It gets messy.
Yeah. Well, how long was this period of time from the day that you started gambling to the day that it wrapped up?
So I'm 53 now. The first experience I remember is my parents we were skiing in somewhere in I guess New Mexico or near Las Vegas. And we had taken a day trip, and I was a small kid, and we went to Circus, right? And they put me in the daycare. And from that point forward, that experience stuck with me. It was ingrained in me. The bells, the lights, the whistles, the excitement, the action, the energy, right? And as a youth, I was like, wow, like this is the place, right? And so, and I'm guessing that was probably around between 5 and 7 that occurred, and it just lit the fuse from that point, right? That was the spark, right? And I still remember that. Like when I think about that moment, I can actually get a euphoric recall from that. That's how powerful that is.
Wow.
Right? Yeah.
I can relate to that. I think I grew up near Atlantic City in New Jersey, and it's not like my family really gambled too much, but a lot of times when we would go for dinners, they'd be in a casino because that's where all the nice restaurants are in Atlantic City. And I can remember from a really young age being like, "Oh, I can't wait to play on this machine." I had no idea what it was. It was just cool lights and people seemed interested in it. So it was like, "Oh, I want to do that." Do you feel like that early experience kind of set things up for what would come?
It did. I think that in between those cool activities that are really healthy outlets, right, was that dopamine release, right?
Yeah.
Just constant dopamine. And so when I got that experience and I walked in there and I remember that, it's just like, wow, okay, this is it, you
Mm,
know? And then, I understood what money was at that time. I guess I was old enough. And, I knew that there was a way to like, this is the answer. Like, if
mm,
I can find a way, I won't have to work. I can retire early. I can live a luxurious lifestyle, right?
mm.
I won't have to do it the way everybody else is doing it, right? There's got to be a quicker, faster, easier way
Yeah,
to get there, right?
I can
And
relate to that.
gambling
And
provided a solution like to that, right? And I sought that, right? Risk-seeking behavior, thrill-seeking, that sensation-seeking, right? And it provided escape from my problems. And that's what really gambling has offered me throughout my life. One thing, it was an
mm,
escape, an emotional escape. Another thing is it gave me a sensation on the inside without a drink or a drug. And
mm.
that's powerful.
Yeah, that's hard to understand, I guess, if you don't have a gambling problem, is that the intensity in which you can be involved with it, get a thrill from doing it, can be palatable and comparable to alcohol or drugs. And that's very, very difficult to conceptualize if
Yeah,
you really haven't gambled before. When I finished playing sports, that gambling was a way to keep that going or keep that sense of competition alive. Do you feel like you started gambling more after you stopped playing sports?
absolutely, 100%. It gave me that experience, right? It kept me in action, the
Mhm,
competition, the thrill, the trying to beat the game, right? To win,
mm,
right? And so, yeah, I formed a relationship with that, right? Those behaviors, right?
mm.
And ultimately, I didn't realize as time went on, it severely changed my belief system, and I could no longer see the truth.
What was a day in your life like at the peak of your gambling?
There's been a lot of peaks. Um, so my gambling has evolved like as I've lived in Virginia most of my adult life. And so, as I get out into my later years, the Virginia lottery comes along, the horse track comes along in New Kent, um, legalized sports betting comes along, right? And then we talk about gambling emporiums come along. It got so bad. I had at one point in time payday loans for the car, loans on the
Mm,
loans, the check cashing places, uh, loans there, loans on the car, loans with the loan sharks and the bookies. I couldn't pick up the telephone and answer it. Um, I
mm,
was running scared. It was bad. I gambled my way to jail cells. Right, I'm a 12-time convicted felon. Right, and recovery has turned all that around and restored everything. Not once, but twice. I
mm,
gambled my way to psychiatric wards. I gambled my way to many suicide attempts. I
mm,
gambled my way to substance use disorders with chemicals, right? You wreck your finances, you got to pour something on top of it. That was me. I gambled my way to complete homelessness, living as a fugitive in a tent in the woods, right across from Rosie's, panhandling, holding a sign to get money to run back and forth to Rosie's so I could get money to eat, money for cigarettes, money so I could maybe, if I hit, right, when I had one of those days where I hit decent, I could get a hotel room, take a shower, those things.
wow.
That's how bad it got over the years, right? And even when I went to jail, Rob, I gambled my way to isolation cells, right? I get into jail and that's the thing going on. The canteen is the currency in jail, right? I got a big box of canteen. I hit the poker table, right? The card table. And now next thing I know, I burn up all my canteen. I'm in debt. And now I'm in trouble, right? And my rear end's on fire and people I can't pay it back.
Mm.
Right. And so now I'm like, hey, I got to leave. People are after me on this pod. You got to get me out of here. And
Mm.
so now I'm in an isolation cell. And so it got really bad.
So you went into gambling debt while incarcerated?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Wow.
Many times.
As someone who never did experience the prison system, it came as a big surprise to me how big gambling culture is. in prisons. What was that experience like? Was gambling very popular amongst many people in the prison, or was it only people with gambling problems that really gravitated towards it?
Yeah, that's a good question. No, it's a common thing. It's something to do to pass the time. The
Mm,
cards, and they take up the cards and tear them up and make little poker chips out of them, right? So between the card games and the poker chips, a big day, right, is canteen day when
mm,
everybody gets their canteen, right? Everybody's got their bag of their goodies. Man, the sheet goes out on the table, the cards come out, the poker chips come out, and it's on.
mm,
That whole day there is canteen swapping around and betting and the blackjack and the cards and the spades and this and that and the other. It's going down,
wow.
right? And so when you run out of money and then you start booking just like you would on the in outside of being incarcerated, hey, I'll front you 15 items, right, to keep you on the table, right? And
Mm,
then you burn through that, and now you can't pay it back. Now what do you do, right? People want their canteen back,
mm,
right? It's just like the money, it's the currency in jail. And so it's terrifying, right? Because now people are after you. And then
wow.
they're not playing around and you ruin your name on the pod real quick. And so now it's I got to get out of here. I'm in danger.
So you said that there was numerous times that you were incarcerated. Why did you end up back after you had left the first time?
I couldn't stop. I couldn't stop, It's a behavior like it's this obsession that just constantly gnawing at you on my brain and in my body, creating these cravings to want to go and win, to
Mm,
get that dopamine release, right? I formed a relationship with those behaviors. Once you build that habit loop, right, those behaviors, it's hard to change. It's difficult to stop. So you remove the money and now I'm restless, irritable, and anxious, and life has no meaning because I'm not getting the dopamine fired into me like I'm used to getting from when I'm in action. Now I don't know how to live without gambling, right? And so when you build a relationship with those behaviors, it's very, very difficult to stop,
mm,
just like a substance or anything else, right? I had a skewed relationship with money. It was an obsessive, compulsive, impulsive relationship with it,
mm.
right? And it almost killed me.
Yeah. Were the crimes motivated by acquiring more money to continue to gamble?
Yeah, so they're all non-violent offenses for 3 forgery, 3 uttering. There were several grand larcenies, credit card theft, credit card fraud. Um, and then later along, we get into possession of Schedule 1, Schedule 2,
Mm,
where it starts to manifest through into chemicals, right?
mm.
So, yeah.
Well, what turned it around? What made you eventually seek recovery, and what began to work in terms of getting better?
And I have a hard time answering this. And the best way I can answer this when I'm asked, I think the pain became great enough. It got so bad that I was homeless, living in a tent. My person that I've been in a relationship with 8 years, Kelly, she had got taken to jail, right, for narcotics possession, and I was left alone, and I didn't know what to do. And this happened a couple times, right? But it was the straw at that moment. I said, I've had recovery before, had been in recovery, not only from substances, but from gambling, right?
Mm,
But I it was always, I cloaked the gambling with the substance. Like the
mm,
substance was the problem, right? So I could have that ace in my back pocket that I could gamble again, right? And so I think the pain just got great enough. And it was that moment where I was just so hopeless, so broken. I didn't want to live
mm,
anymore. And somehow or another, my higher power granted me enough motivation and inspiration to get my rear end back to a treatment facility I had been to 16 times prior,
mm,
right? Recovering from this thing. Right. And so they wouldn't help me with the gambling part, but they would help me with the substance. Right. And so later on, I got into this field and I'm working with people in recovery. I get cleaned up, right, and sober, and the obsession to gamble kind of subsides a lot. And My life becomes manageable. I get certified and licensed to work as a peer support specialist. I get promoted a couple of times to a program coordinator at the treatment facility I'd been through so many times. And here I am supervising a crew of 15 other peers. And what am I doing? I'm buying them like lottery tickets for birthdays, holidays, and these type of things, right? And so the director comes to me and is like, Sean, what are you doing? And I'm like, well, then it's not, what's the big deal? It's just scratch tickets. And he's like, you're missing it. You're missing the behavior part of this thing, you know? And he's like, you have it. You got some issues with gambling, don't you? And I'm like, oh no, I'm good. You know, I wouldn't ever tell anybody. I hid it for the longest time. So finally, after this time of going to treatment where things were so bad, right? And of course, I had a reoccurrence after that with gambling, right? That was the ignition source for almost 4.5 years or whatever, being in recovery. I started gambling again, right? By doing those little things. Those behaviors resurfaced. They were never addressed for the gambling portion of it, right? And I went back to gambling, and it wasn't long. I was back in the mix of full-blown addiction from active gambling, full-blown addiction from substance again for another 2-year run, reoffending. In this go around, going back to that treatment facility that I was talking about when things had gotten so bad, I finally came out and said, look, my cycle is the gambling is leading me to the substance over and over and over. I wrecked my finances by gambling, and now I will need to escape bigger than what gambling can offer at this point in time, right? So I'm escaping with the gambling. I can escape with the drink. I can escape with the drug. I need a constant escape from what because I'm just crushed on the inside, right? And that just keeps going until I land in jail cells and tents in the woods and psychiatric wards and suicide attempts. Yeah, so it's been a long road for me. So it's only by the grace of God that I stand here, that undeserved favor that recovery offers, right? That people invested in me, right? And said, listen, Sean, when are we going to address the gambling? And I said, all right, I'm going to take a look at it. I'm going to start working on the gambling side of things. And they said, yeah, that's what you really should be working on, because you start gambling and you end up on substances. Let's attack the gambling, and that'll hopefully keep you away from the substance. And it's working.
That's awesome.
It's working, man.
How do people invest in you? What does your support network look like?
Number one is, like I said, I've been to that facility so many times. When I walked in there for the 16th time again, there was no judgment. They offered open arms, and I was just riddled with shame and guilt, just demoralized. And they had open arms, and they just provided the love, right? And what I'm finding is my support network today provides that love that I've been craving all along, right? They know how to love me in a gentle, soft, accountable way, right? A supportive way, right? So yeah, but my support network is amazing. That's like all of my different pathways to recovery. And then I have a lot of them. You know, I am a member of Gamblers Anonymous. I also am a member of a sports team, right? We're flipping it, right? We flip the behaviors back to healthy activities, right? As it did as a child before the gambling ever came along. So I'm part of a soccer team of people in recovery and other people, right? And that's a recovery pathway, pro-social activities, right? Gamblers Anonymous. I go to Spiritual Solution, you know, through religious ways as well. I give back to the places that I've been and provide that service work. So today I know how to go to jails well. I know how to go to treatment centers well. So I go to these places now and provide service and give back. And those men teach me how not to go to treatment, how not to go back to jail, and then how not to go to prison. All right. So I carry the message of hope back into the places that I once was, to help other people, right? Because people did it for me. Yeah, the list goes on. Activity, fitness, yoga, it continues to go on, you know, working out, staying healthy, eating properly. Like, these are all pathways of recovery and people that are part of this support network that just embrace me, family and friends. They have an understanding about gambling disorders. And instead of enabling me by providing me money, they know how to support me and sever the connection with money, right? Because my parents were one of the biggest enablers. They didn't know I was lying and conning and manipulating, doing all that stuff. I didn't want to.
Yeah.
But like I said, it skewed my belief system. It changed my moral makeup on my thought process, right? I became this person that I never thought I would become. And gambling took me there. I never thought as an educated professional that I would be homeless. I would end up with a substance use disorder. I would turn out as a person that lives with a gambling disorder, right? I didn't check the checkbox that said I wanted to do this for a living.
Mm.
All that pain had purpose. So today, an individual came to me, that works for the Department of Health and Behavioral, or the Department of Behavioral Health and Developmental Services here in Richmond in 2022, about August, and said, "Hey," and I heard we were on a peer support meeting, and it was about gambling, and he was just talking about it, and I was telling him some of my stuff. For the first time, I started opening up about it. He said, "I got an opportunity for you." So we went offline and connected, and I said, "Well, what's going on?" He said, "I'm going to help you with your gambling
Mm.
disorder." And I said, "Well, how are you going to do that?" And he goes, "I'm going to help you get trained and licensed and certified and endorsed to work with problem gamblers.
Mm.
And they're going to help you address your problem, just like working with people with alcohol use disorders and substance use disorders, right? We're gonna do that for the gambling side of it, right? And we're gonna hopefully independently deal with those. So not only am I a member of Gamblers Anonymous, I'm a member of other 12-step mutual aid programs and groups, right, to address the other side of things. So I treat these disorders independently. And so that creates this big, large support networks of people that surround me with that love and support and that kindness and that gentleness, right? And they call me on my BS. They can see the blind spots that I can't see all around me. And I need that accountability surrounding me.
That's just perfect, and I'm really happy that you've ended up in a position where you're able to now give back to people who are going through the exact same thing that you were going through. And I think another thing I want people to get from this podcast, there's this definite stereotype of someone who's gone to prison and this belief system that they did something wrong, that they're a bad person to some extent. And what I've consistently found, especially within the problem gambling field, is that actions have been motivated out of this belief that if we didn't do them, we wouldn't survive. And so I just want people to realize that good people make bad decisions when bad things are happening in their mind.
Yeah.
And that seems to be what happened with you.
I'm no longer held hostage by my past, right? Those are things I did. They are not who I am, right? And I've been able to, recovery's offered me that delineation to see that truth,
Mhm.
right? To that restoration of truth, right? Where I couldn't see the truth, right? To change, recovery offers the ability to help people change the belief system.
Mm.
Like, it is possible to recover from gambling. I didn't think it was. There are no more limitations, but all that stuff, all that bondage that I did, held me hostage for the longest time. And that became my identity. That is no longer my identity. That is not who I am. Those are things that I did. Those
Mm.
are mistakes that I made. And so I continue to try to make a living amends today back to myself, my higher power, and community for those things that I've done as a
Mm.
way of making a living amends has really helped change the belief system, and that continues to evolve. So I can see the truth today, right? The odds are absolutely in not favor of Sean to
Mm.
gamble. It's not. And I could never see that, right?
Mm.
Like, all you got to do is look at the odds. It's completely stacked against you. You will lose. Not only will you lose money, but now you're talking your freedom, everything else, the joy, all the stuff on the inside, right?
If you go back in time and someone tells you that the odds of what you're doing are bad and you're going to lose, would that have stopped you from gambling at the time?
It never did. People
Mm.
told me that.
Mm.
It didn't, because I was terminally unique and fatally cool, right? I
Mm.
was going to be that different from everybody else. I didn't want to accept that as and answer as a truth. I knew that there was a way for Sean not to have to work. Gambling was going to provide the retirement, the luxurious lifestyle, and I was going to do it the easy way. I was going to take a different path than everybody else,
Mhm.
right? And what it did, I did. I went to jails. I went to psychiatric wards, homelessness, all that stuff. A different path, right? Not that path. That the illusion uh, seems to be promoted to offer people, right? The big
Yeah.
wins, everybody hangs on to that, right? The money, man.
Is there anything that someone could have said to you back then that would have gotten you to stop?
I don't think so. I've heard a lot from a lot of people that like, hey, what is going on with you? I don't think anything. I had to experience it. I had to prove it to myself.
The reason that I ask is because if someone's watching this right now and they're kind of on the fence about should I keep gambling and try to win or should I leave it behind and accept that it's defeated me? What can we say to that person in a moment of like they genuinely wanting to consider making a change that would convince them to follow through on that?
I tell people all the time, don't let your story become mine. I
Mm,
am here so that you don't have to bear the burdens that I've bared. Because I didn't think that was gonna happen to me. And those are just some of them, right? I'm not talking about all the wrecked relationships, all the harm that I caused to my daughter, right? And my parents and all my loved ones, right? I really destroyed my family for a long time. It really sickened my family. They became ill as I got sicker and sicker and sicker. My family got sicker. And that works both ways in recovery, right? So as we become well, it starts to, the family unit becomes better and better and better. And that has a ripple effect in the community. But yeah, that's what I tell them. That's today is don't let your story become mine. I didn't think my life was going to end up like that, but it did. I'm on the fire lines, right? I
mm,
stand in the trenches. I see the despair, not only in the individuals, but the families, right? The divorces, the kids getting separated from parents, people going to homelessness, right? And the offenses that are created and advocating for these people, right? So I'm in the midst of it. What I'm seeing is what my higher power is showing me is a mirror of Sean. I get to see me every day on what I used to be and how I used to think, right? That
mm,
these things aren't going to happen. And be all right. It's just gambling. It's no big deal, right? It
mm.
is. I'm here to tell you it is. And it can be real quick. Before I knew it, I was so hooked, I couldn't stop.
When you were talking about ways that you've been experiencing recovery now and what you've been doing, you mentioned that you play on a soccer team with other people in recovery, and I think that's awesome. The thing that came into my mind is I'm remembering how I was feeling after I first quit gambling, and if someone had told me to do anything and I went and did it, I experienced it as a kind of bad experience. Like, it didn't bring excitement, I didn't feel anything. When you were early on in your recovery, is there anything that you did that felt good, or was that something that changed with time?
It changed with time. Yeah, it took a long time to get out of that for my brain to like attach the natural dopamine releases that come with life. I was so used to getting artificial stimuli pumped
Mhm,
into my brain constantly, constantly, constantly. And when I stopped, it took a long time. I'm saying probably at least 6 months before normal activities started to have that feel good sensation in things, right? And that continues to get, I guess, more normal the longer I'm in recovery, right? By
mhm,
those natural dopamine releases, like being around your family and the enjoyment and the stimuli that comes from that, right? I was here, but I was focused on the bets, not on the game and
mhm.
not on the family.
So you're living kind of in limbo between the future and the present, and it's just you're never there.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's
I mean, my physical body's here,
yeah.
but cognitively, I'm not there. I'm so
Mhm,
disconnected from everybody else and what's going on because this obsession is just grinding to want to gamble or who's going to win or how am I going to cover this loss or just all this craziness, right?
mhm.
Like,
You know what I really appreciate about this conversation is we're talking about problem gambling, and yet there's been very little mention of the money that was lost. It's been more about the emotions that it brought, the reality that it brought, the consequences that it brought, very little about the money. And I appreciate that because so often people point towards problem gamblers and they say it's a money problem, it's a financial issue. Is that something that you told yourself while you were gambling that, "Oh, I just have a money problem right now, like, I'll be fine," or was that something that maybe I just told myself?
No, gambling was a solution to my financial problems.
Mm,
That is the skewed belief system.
mm,
Gambling was the cause of my financial problems, but I
mm,
couldn't see that, right? That's the twisted thinking that
mm,
occurs in the gambling disorder to the brain, right?
mm.
I was so caught up in that anticipation to want to win that and that's firing all that dopamine or want to lose even sometimes, right? It was just the experience it being in action, right? And yeah, but yeah, so that it changed my brain, my makeup of my brain. It really, really did, you know.
Where do you think you would have ended up if your colleague didn't pull you aside that day and talk about the scratch tickets being a continuation of the problem?
Yeah, I don't know. I was so proud to have silver floor mats in my car. Like it was an iconic thing, to my social environment. Like, whoa, what is going on in here, right? And that was from all the lottery dust. I don't know where I would be. I think it would have, like I said, I would either be long passed away or locked away in a prison somewhere if I
Mm.
kept going.
Are you
Um,
saying the floors of your car were coated in scratch offs?
yeah,
Wow.
yeah. Yeah, I got really that was like a proud, like, "Look at me," the ego, like, I got
Mm,
silver floor mats on, I'm big, I'm making big money here, right?
mm,
I was losing the whole time, right? But I wanted to promote the fact that I was, like, that guy, like, I wanted that life. I wanted that experience. I wanted to be like on TV, these movie stars and these famous people, right? I'm making all this money and scratchers and this and that's it's a combination. You get a little bit here and a little bit there and a little bit there, and you create income streams, right? What I was creating is lost streams.
mm.
I'm talking about in here.
Yeah.
It kept pulling away at my, it was stealing on the inside of me.
Mm.
Right, my emotions. I became numb to life.
Have you done any, like, digging in the time since you've begun recovery as to maybe why you wanted this fame or this big shot status?
I wanted to be successful, probably to, like, impress my family and my dad of finding a different way to achieve financial success, right?
Mm.
Without having to work for a long period of time. I guess maybe that's it. I also there were role models, right? That role modeling that you see other people. I wanted that with all those things.
I ask because, when I think about the reasons that I was gambling, a lot of it was motivated by wanting to do something different than what everyone else wanted. It was almost like I had to question the path that seemed laid out in front of me of go to school, get a good job, get a promotion, move up. Like that was always so unappealing to me that I wanted to prove that it could be done another way as well. And I think that's kind of maybe where it stems from for me, like a questioning of authority, questioning of believing what other people told me to do, just
Mhm.
taking it the wrong way.
Yeah, and I work with people that are in the same mindset, especially, and I got into that too, right? It tried to manifest itself into cryptos and stock
Mhm.
options and all that stuff, right? But when I work with people, I like I said, I see me, that same thinking pattern, right? Those same cognitive distortions or disbeliefs, and I'm like, uh, either they tell me all the time. I know there's a different way if I research it enough, and if I educate myself enough, and if I practice, and if I just practice self discipline,
Mm.
right, I can do it. And I'm not saying you can't, but for me, I couldn't. I
Mm.
tried all that. Right, it just didn't work for me. I think I just want to touch on, if I like to say, if you do have a gambling problem or experience a loss of control, there is help available. Don't take advice from the last person you gambled with. Reach out and connect with either 1-800-GAMBLER, or you can call the Virginia Partnership for Gaming and Health here. And that number is 888-532-3500 here in Virginia. And we're here to help you. right? There is a way out of this thing. You don't have to do it alone. You don't have to keep it a secret. It's only going to get worse, and help is available.
And to anyone that's watching that wants to hear another story of gambling harm, then check out this video. And let's keep getting better together, one day at a time.